MacKenzie Weegar's name has been popping up in trade rumors. Is this the move for the Sharks to fix their blue line?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young. I've been covering the Sharks since 2018, also the caretaker at the Reef. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly part of the Locked On Network, the number one sports podcast network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be exploring MacKenzie Weegar as a potential option for the San Jose Sharks to try to fix their blue line. We'll do the whole MacKenzie Weegar profile. We'll learn about MacKenzie Weegar's past, what he does very well, why I think he could be a potential fit. We'll dig into his contract, which is probably going to be the biggest burden of any potential deal. And then we'll discuss if it makes sense and what the Calgary Flames probably want in return. So let's get started by learning more about Mr. Weegar. So MacKenzie Weegar is a former seventh round draft pick, by the Florida Panthers, 206th overall, 2013 NHL draft. Weegar's 6 foot, 206 pound right-handed shot defenseman. He came up through the Q, playing with the Halifax Mooseheads, and he has played now 606 NHL games. He's spent 6 years with the Florida Panthers, and he spent the last 4 years with the Calgary Flames. Of course, he was part of that blockbuster deal that brought Jonathan Huberdeau to Calgary, and of course, Matthew Tkachuk to the Florida Panthers. Tkachuk, of course, then helped bring the Panthers to the promised land as they won the past 2 Stanley Cups. Probably doesn't look like they're going to win the Stanley Cup this year, but still part of a blockbuster trade for both franchises. And as we've seen, the Flames are now kind of entering a potential rebuild here. And the Panthers are still going to, this year's been a down year, but still going to be a force over the next couple seasons as long as Tkachuk and they get some of their guys back healthy next year should continue to be solid players. But as for MacKenzie Weegar, so again, spent time over in the Q, playing with Halifax Mooseheads before coming over, turning professional from there. So he says my internet's being super slow right now as I'm trying to pull this up. Spent a couple seasons with the Mooseheads, played in the AHL for a little bit before becoming a full-time NHL player in the 2017-2018 season where he played 60 games and then basically was a full-time player from there on. He's been a relatively healthy player basically since 21-22, where he's played 80 games, 81 games, 82 games, 81 games, and 56 games so far for the Flame. This is a guy who's got to be in the lineup night in, night out. You don't have to worry about injuries, even with his age. This is not a guy that's going to miss a lot of time for you. So looking at what he has done this season, so in 56 games, 3 goals, 17 assists, 123 shots, while averaging 23-10 time on ice every night. Goals for Corsi for. So when he is on the ice, the Calgary Flames attempt 52.1% of the shot attempts. Goals for 33.73% goals for. So when he is on the ice, the other team scores the majority of the goals. Remember, this Flames team right now is allergic to offense. This team has struggled to score this year. They're one of the worst teams in the NHL when it comes to production. And not even this year, the past couple seasons, this team has struggled to generate offense. So you're going to see numbers like that down because a team like the Flames do struggle to finish. So yes, the goals for percentage, your plus minus, all that stuff, that is not going to be pretty numbers for MacKenzie Weegar. Looking at his evolving hockey stat card this season, he has played over first pairing minutes, even strength. He plays on the power play, plays on the PK, like a true play in all situations defenseman. His expected goals above replacement is solid, but his actual goals above replacement is not good. Same thing with the defense. The expected goals above replacement's okay, and the goals above replacement allowed, not good. And I think this, again, speaks to just the shape that the Flames are in. The goaltending has really crashed this season compared to what it was before. So some of those numbers aren't super great. He's an 8th percentile player at first pairing minutes, 19th percentile offensively, 29th percentile defensively. If you look, though, at the last 3 seasons combined here, Weegar paints a much better picture playing the same type of role, where he's an 85 percentile player, 83 percentile offensively, 76 percentile defensively player, while having positive numbers throughout offensive, power play, shorthand. He's been a very good player for the Calgary Flames over the last couple seasons here. So this year, though, you've seen a major dip, and that the question is going to be, is it Weegar or is it the system that, or the where he is at right now? And I'm more in I think the Calgary Flames are just a really bad team that got propped up by goaltending last year, and now you're seeing that regression. So I think MacKenzie Weegar is probably not playing up to what you would expect because of just the state of the team. That's my early belief right now. So looking at his advanced hockey stat card, he's a 68th percentile WAR player over the last 3 seasons. The offense has been pretty solid and even pretty consistent. The defense, like I said, this year, I think it has taken a little bit of a tumble for him. He's been good on the PK. The finishing's been good. He's played against good teammates, or played against solid competition. He's played with solid teammates, as you would expect for him, a top pairing player. He can play on both sides, even though he's right-handed, and you would assume with the Sharks that he would play on the right-handed as a right-handed defenseman. Looking at his usage from I've got to pull up from Dauber Sports. Sorry, excuse me about that. He is a player who plays against quality competition and plays a lot of offensive zone starts, which you would expect because he's one of their best offensive defensemen. And he does, like I say, he does a good job with it, with driving offense, especially with the shot attempts. He's just been getting very unlucky with the goals for percentage, especially when you look at some of his other analytics. He's well below what you would expect for his, like, comparing his expected goals for to his actual goals for. It's very well below there. So looking at his all 3 zones cards. So what this does is it tracks what he does well, especially when it comes to transition. And this is where, if you're going to talk me into a potential trade, this is why MacKenzie Weegar might be a potential fit for the Sharks. He is excellent at getting the puck out of his own zone, one, and then getting the puck into the other team's zone. That is his strength right now. And some of the offensive stuff is pretty solid, and some of the passing is also, there's some hits and there's some misses in there. But MacKenzie Weegar's strengths are carrying and getting the puck from point A to point B, which is arguably the biggest issue the San Jose Sharks have on their blue line, is their inability. Not many of their defensemen can help break the puck out of the zone. So that, I think, when you're looking at, is what potentially makes MacKenzie Weegar so attractive, is his ability to do the thing that the Sharks need the most help with from their blue line, is carrying the puck. So we're going to talk about his contract, though, and I think that's kind of the big elephant in the room with MacKenzie Weegar. So we'll break down his contract, why it sounds like a scary number, but if you dig into it, it's really not too bad. So we'll discuss his contract here, and then, of course, we'll talk about if it makes sense for the San Jose Sharks. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. Ever want to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with the NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future. You'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. And now, not only can you pick, can your pick cash, but you can also send you to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on the NBA future. Get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right. I do, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you haven't yet, now you got to check out the Everydayer Club. You get ad-free episodes, of course, access to our group chat on Discord, and more. Use the code DEADLINE right now ahead of the trade deadline for 1 month free. Join the show over at lockedonsharks.supercast or hit the link in the show notes. And again, remember to use that promo code DEADLINE to try it for a month for free. So, MacKenzie Weegar, the big problem is potentially Weegar's contract. So, MacKenzie Weegar has, including this year, 5 years on his contract. So, after this year, he'll have 4 more years on his contract for at $6.25 million. So, Weegar, who's 32, right? And I know there's going to be people screaming at me in the comments. He doesn't fit the timeline, right? He's too old to begin the training. I get it, right? He just turned 32 last month. So as a reminder, the Sharks need to find defensive help now. Anybody you draft with the pick, whatever, unless the Sharks end up getting like the 3rd pick in the draft where they're in a position to draft Keaton Verhoff, anybody else that you get in the draft, they are realistically not going to make an NHL impact for 3 years. 3 years. So you can still do things like add veteran defensemen and also draft and develop young players to take their place when those guys age out. So, and yes, I would love to get a high impact NHL defenseman who's 22 years old. I'd also like $1 million for doing this show. That's just, teams are not just handing out, giving away young defensemen. So our mission here is to try to find the best of what's realistically available while you still draft and develop players. Okay? You can do both. And we've talked about it before. You have to get guys who can help Macklin Celebrini right now. So, yes, you can still draft somebody. You can draft 2 defensemen in the first round. I don't care. Cool. Please do draft 2 defensemen in the first round. You can still also make a trade for MacKenzie Weegar. So, all right, MacKenzie Weegar. So he is year 3. This year is year 3 of his 8-year deal at $6.25 million. He has a no trade clause. So any trade that he would have to waive his trade clause. That is the big thing to keep in mind, is he would have to waive his trade clause to get moved. He has a no trade clause this year. He has a no trade clause next year as well. Then it goes to a modified trade clause with a 10-team no trade list starting in the 27-28 season and continuing through the final season of his deal during the 2030-2031, where he'll be a UFA after that at the age of 37. So I get it. That's a long commitment there, right? You're signing up for a player who's just turned 32. He'll be 36, 37, right, by the time that deal is over. I get it. And the 6.25 sounds like a really scary number. And Sharks fans were going to be very hesitant about long-term big money contracts. But it's not really a big money contract, to be honest. So Weegar right now, if you look at where MacKenzie Weegar, like just defenseman, and you go like sort by cap hit all the way down, MacKenzie Weegar is the 53rd highest paid defenseman in the NHL. So that's like low end number 2 defenseman when it comes to, right? The first 32 guys would theoretically be your number 1 defenseman. The next 32 guys would theoretically be your number 2 defenseman, and so on and so forth. I know it's not a clean, but right, this is a guy who's kind of in that next big tier there. And, even looking at, his contract, it's a very fair contract compared to some of his peers. You look at a guy like Hampus Lindholm, who makes $6.5 million. He's on year 4 of his deal. He's the same age as MacKenzie Weegar. Josh Morrissey, who's a couple years younger. He's on he's on year 6 of 8 of his at $6.25 million. Travis Sanheim, a couple years younger. He's in the year 3 of his $6.25 million deal. Aaron Ekblad, who just signed a brand new deal at age 30 at $6.1 million. Like Jacob Slavin, who's arguably that's a ridiculous deal. Jacob Slavin's deal, who's arguably one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. Just started his deal at $6.4 million. That's a steal of a contract. Colton Parayko, who's, the same age on year 4 of his $6.5 million. So a lot of these COVID cap contracts, right, they're all pretty similar here. And especially when you look at, yes, there's going to be some contracts aging out, but you look at some of the contracts that are going to be coming up here. Brant Clark is a UFA or an RFA after this season. Simone Nemec is gonna need a new contract here. You look at some of Jamie Drysdale is coming off of his kind of bridge contract here, is probably gonna need a new deal. Like you have a bunch of younger guys who are going to get paid and kind of push this contract down into that middle 6 or that middle pairing contract, which is, I think, eventually where he'll end up for the Sharks if the Sharks do acquire him. Is he'll probably be the second pairing defenseman at some, after some of their younger guys start to develop and become NHL players. MacKenzie Weegar is probably going to be your second pairing defenseman here. So $6.25 million for a second pairing defenseman who does what MacKenzie Weegar does. It's not the worst. Like, I think it's a very manageable contract if he wants to trade. And then what you do though is it says Weegar, he's already 32, is you wait till he turns 35. Because once he turns 35, it becomes much easier to buy out his contract. So I already did the work for you guys. If the 29-30 season, when he has 2 years left on his deal, if you were to buy him out that offseason, he would have a cap hit for the next 4 years at $2.08 million, and you would save so the first year you would save basically $4.2 million. The next year you'd save $4.2 million. And then the 2031 season through the 2033 season, you would have a cap hit of 2.1 million. We'll just round up there. Or you wait to the last year of his contract, kind of like what we saw with Mark-Edward Vlasic. When you're buying out players who are over 35, you only have to pay 2/3 of the buyout of the contract. So if they were to buy him out in the 2030-31 season, you would be paying $2.1 million in the 2031. So you would save over $4 million that season. And then the next year you'd have a cap hit of $2 million, basically a little over that $2.1 million. So it would be really easy once Weegar kind of ages out of his contract to just buy him out. You would save some money and then help kind of spread the cap hit over the 2 seasons there. And you would still end up saving money instead of just kind of keeping him if you get to that point with him. So While the contract, again, that $6.25 million is a scary number right now for a Sharks team that has $55 million in cap space going to this offseason. It's a pretty manageable number, and then you have pretty easy outs to move on from him if you need to get to that road once he kind of hits that age 35 season. And especially, again, right, if you draft a guy in the first round and expect him to kind of take over whatever MacKenzie Weegar's role is, that 3-year window really works out well for when MacKenzie Weegar is going to be kind of exiting and your new player X is going to be kind of getting on the highway here. So does it make sense for the Sharks, and what are the Flames possibly looking for? So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is the job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I'll be talking to you about this, companies like yours will have hired 27 people on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is the job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, again, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. If you never miss an episode, the Everyday Club is built for you. Get Locked On Sharks ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head over to LockedOnSharks.supercast to join the club. And again, use the code DEADLINE for 1 month free. All right, does it make sense? It kind of does. It really kind of does, because I think Weegar, who's playing on a really bad Calgary Flames team. And yes, I know the Sharks aren't like some super world beater. He's going to have to continue to play top pairing minutes on the Sharks for now. But he does the thing that the Sharks really struggle at from the blue line perspective of that puck carrying defenseman, right? Where if it's Macklin Celebrini on the ice, who else can get the puck from the defensive zone into the offensive zone? And I think that's where Weegar's role really would fill in. I think he'd be an improvement on John Klingberg on the power play. I don't think that's much of a that's not a big time, I think, hot take right there from that MacKenzie Weegar would be better. And yes, I know the age is going to be worrisome at 32, but this is a guy who's been very healthy, does not miss a lot of games, has not missed a ton of games over the past 5 or 6 seasons. So I don't think that's going to be a thing for him that all of a sudden he just can't stay healthy. I think this is a guy who, when you get better, talented players around you, like some of the guys the Sharks have, he can score. And it wasn't that long ago that Weegar scored 20 goals for the Calgary Flames in the 23-24 season. He had 20 goals, 32 assists for 52 points. Yes, that's a career high for him for production. But this is a guy who, was putting up 45. He had 31 points the next year, 52, 47. And this year's going to be a down year because of just what the team is this year. So I think you could probably pencil him in for 40 to 45 points for you on a solid team. And, I think this could be a situation where putting him around better players, you probably see more production from him and maybe rejuvenate his career. Guy has worn an A for the Flames. Like this is so he's well liked in the locker room. He's a leader on and off the ice. I think it would make a lot of sense for the Sharks in that perspective there. And it's easy. The contract, I know, again, 6.25 sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of things and where defensive contracts are going to be headed really soon, I think it's a really manageable contract with easy outs in the last, either 2 seasons or especially that last season of his deal if you need to kind of go down that road. So I think about like a lot of sense. And for the Flames, this is, I think, the tricky part, right? Because MacKenzie Weegar would have to want to waive his no move clause to come to San Jose. And who knows, right? Who knows if that is something that he would want to do. But for the Flames here, right, this is a team that is very much in their rebuild here. They've got some picks. They have this year they have their own pick, and then they also have the Vegas Golden Knights pick, and then they'll have the Vegas Golden Knights pick as well. They might get the Panthers pick at some point here, I think, as well, or whatever the Panthers pick is. Who knows what that Panthers pick is? But right, this is a team that they've got a lot of their own picks, but maybe they do want some more picks. So maybe you could start with the Oilers pick and start with that. You could also see, because they don't really have a lot, like looking at their prospect pool, they don't really have guys, especially down the middle, that you feel like are going to be kind of impact players for them. And I'm not saying Michael Misa, but this could be a potential where a Filip Bystedt landing spot where they don't really have guys who project to be at least like second line centers. And Bystedt, I think, would come in and probably be their best middle, kind of their best center in their prospect pool right now. So I think that is probably where you would start is, see if you could, do something like Bystedt and then maybe a mid-round pick or something like that. Or if you wanted to do Bystedt, I think you center the package around Bystedt for them. And then you're getting a player who's going to be an effective, has a role for you for the next kind of 3 years, like a legitimate role for you. And I think can play that role pretty well while you still have some of your young defensemen who are going to, it doesn't put pressure on guys like Eric Polkamp to have to kind of hit the ground running right away. And players that you draft and develop can still go on their own timeline. Because again, when you're starting to exit the MacKenzie Weegar contract, you have players who are going to be hopefully ready to take up that role. And whether it's a guy like Polkamp or whether, it's whoever you draft in the first round this year, or which are like you kind of have a nice bridge option here with MacKenzie Weegar. So we'll see. It depends what the Flames want to do. It depends on if Weegar wants to actually leave Calgary. Maybe he's happy there. Maybe he wants to go to try to win. But it does make a lot of sense for the Sharks. And I know people are going to see the age, and they're going to see the contract, and they're going to say, no way, it doesn't fit the timeline, like all that stuff. It actually makes perfect sense for the timeline, to be honest, where you find someone who helps you now, and you don't have to worry about giving them a new contract in a couple of years. And it's really easy to get out of that contract when you probably want to get out of that contract. So that's going to be it for me. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll probably do a lapsed Sharks fan guide to the rest of the season because it's been forever since the Sharks played. So we'll start gearing up for actual games on Thursday. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at MyFryhole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.